Welcome to the world of ice. 2 million square kilometers of land ruled by extreme cold. What you're about to see today defies the logic of survival. %80 of this place is buried beneath a permanent ice sheet, creating a landscape that's both a visual paradise and a deadly challenge. And even though it's the largest island on the planet, its entire population could fit inside a single football stadium. Just 57,000 people living where, on paper, humans shouldn't be able to exist. But they're not living in cartoon igloos. They have internet, modern cafes, and a complex urban life. Today, we're going to Greenland, not just to admire its wonders, but to understand how a modern society functions at -40 degrees, eating raw whale meat and fighting internal battles where loneliness can turn the most beautiful landscape on Earth into the backdrop for a deep mental health crisis. If you like videos about the most beautiful and most contradictory places on the planet, you're in the right channel. Here on Complex Planet, we've already released videos like Life in the Coldest Country in Africa, A Kingdom of Ice and Diamonds, and Life in Turkmenistan, the planet's strangest dictatorship. All of them are linked in the pinned comment. Now, let's travel to Greenland. Our journey begins in the capital, Nuuk, and the first thing that shocks most people when they arrive is how normal it feels. You expect an expedition camp. Instead, you find a mini metropolis of nearly 20,000 people, apartment blocks, traffic lights, cars, and actual rush hour traffic. But that normality is an illusion. Nuuk is a bubble. If you want to leave the city and visit the next town over, you can't just hop in a car. There are no roads connecting Greenland's cities. The geography is so hostile, carved by deep fjords and glaciers, that building highways is basically impossible. Travel happens by boat or plane, and if the weather closes in, you're stuck. Nearly 90% of Greenland's population is Inuit, direct descendants of nomads who crossed the Bering Strait from Siberia and Alaska centuries ago. And here's an important warning: never call a local an Eskimo. The word is widely considered offensive, a colonial relic often said to mean something like raw meat eater. The correct term is Inuit, which simply means the people. Visually, the capital is unmistakable. Buildings painted in vivid colors break the monotony of ice and bring life to the city. But originally, this wasn't about aesthetics. It was a survival code. The color of a house signaled its function, so everyone knew where to go, even in the middle of a blizzard. If you saw a yellow building, you knew it was the hospital or the doctor's housing. Red meant schools or churches. Green was for communications and administration. Today, the rule isn't as strict, but the tradition turned Nuuk into a watercolor painted onto a white world. But living inside that painting is expensive. Greenland produces almost nothing. Look at the shelves of the only shopping mall on the entire island. Everything you see, vegetables, electronics, furniture, arrived by ship or plane, mostly from Denmark. And that makes the cost of living astronomical. And speaking of what people consume, we get to the detail that defines Greenlandic endurance: food. In most places, agriculture is the foundation of the diet. Here, where the ground stays frozen most of the year, growing crops isn't realistic. So, the vitamins come from the sea. Traditional Inuit cuisine is a cultural shock for outsiders. Let's start with Mattak. Mattak is whale skin, served raw with a thick layer of fat attached. It's cut into small cubes and eaten like an appetizer. People who've tried it say the flavor is surprisingly mild, like fresh nuts or an ultra-rich piece of sushi, but the texture is rubbery and tough to chew. And they don't eat it as a dare. Whale skin is loaded with vitamin C. It's what kept Inuit communities from dying of scurvy for centuries, in a land with no oranges or lemons. Another delicacy you'll find on a local table is fermented seal fat. The descriptions are interesting. The texture is said to resemble peanut butter, but the taste is intensely fishy and sharply fermented. It's pure caloric fuel, exactly what the body needs to stay warm. They also regularly eat reindeer and musk ox. It's a direct relationship with nature. You hunt to eat. But Nuuk is still comfortable. To understand Greenland's real soul, we have to go north, to Ilulissat. The name literally means icebergs, and that's not poetic exaggeration. This is where geography hits you in the chest. You're looking at fjords that are believed to have produced the iceberg that sank the Titanic. Here, the weather stops being merely cold and becomes lethal. We're talking temperatures anywhere from -30 to -50. At that level of cold, modern technology starts to fail. Batteries drain in minutes. High-performance synthetic fabrics often lose to ancestral wisdom. That's why many local hunters still prefer pants made from polar bear skin and coats made from seal fur. It's not fashion. It's the only truly effective barrier between your body and hypothermia. And yet, Ilulissat is breathtaking. In summer, the sun never sets, a phenomenon known as the midnight sun. In winter, darkness takes over, lit only by the northern lights dancing overhead and the ghostly white glow of icebergs. In Ilulissat, we meet a fascinating figure, the Greenland halibut fisherman. You'd assume fishing on ice is something people do just to survive, right? Wrong. The fishing industry here moves millions. Greenland halibut is a deep-water fish that's highly prized on the global market. The technique is brutal. Fishermen travel out onto the frozen sea by dog sled or snowmobile. Out there, they drill through the ice and drop lines that sink dozens of meters into the dark ocean. A single line can carry more than 100 hooks. Hauling it back up, fish by fish, in cold that freezes your eyelashes is a punishing job. But what's most fascinating is the mindset. You'll meet fishermen who own restaurants, have expensive boats, and live comfortably, and they still head out onto the ice at -40 to fish by hand. Because for them, it's not just a job, it's in the blood. 4-5 generations doing the same thing. For an Ilulissat man, stopping fishing isn't retirement, it's losing your identity. It's a spiritual connection to the environment, something money can't replace. And the dogs, they're not pets. Greenland dogs are working machines, genetically pure and protected by law. In certain areas, bringing in other dogs is forbidden, so the breed doesn't mix. They live outside in the snow, and they're often fed only at the end of the workday to keep their drive sharp and their energy focused on the run. Up to now, you've seen the beauty, the unfamiliar foods, and the toughness of the hunters. But it would be dishonest to end this journey without showing what happens when the tourist cameras are turned off. Greenland is a land of brutal contradictions, and this is where we run into what researchers call the Greenland Paradox. If you ask people who live here, many will tell you they're happy. A recent survey found that, for Greenlanders, nature matters more than work, and for many, it even comes before family. They say, "Without nature, I don't exist." And yet, at the same time, this island carries one of the highest suicide rates in the world. Many assume the reason is the darkness of winter, but studies suggest the peak of this crisis actually happens in summer. The culprit is a fascinating phenomenon known as the midnight sun. Because the Earth spins on an axis that's slightly tilted, during summer, the North Pole points directly toward the sun for months at a time. In that period, the sun doesn't set. It just dips toward the horizon, skims the sea, and climbs back up again. Imagine living for months without a sunset. The light is constant, 24 hours a day. Your body never fully understands that it's time to sleep. Sleep deprivation can trigger delirium, chemical imbalance in the brain, and impulsivity. Too much light can be just as dangerous as darkness. But light isn't the only enemy. There's a historical wound that still bleeds today. And to understand it, we have to talk about places like Kongek. Kongek was a legendary village, famous for producing great hunters who faced the sea in kayaks. It was a symbol of Inuit pride. But after World War II, Denmark, which controlled the island, decided that way of life was backward. They wanted to modernize the economy and profit from industrial fishing. For the Danish government, bringing schools and hospitals to every small village isolated in the ice was simply too expensive. So the decision was to erase those villages from the map. Stores were shut down, power was cut, priests were reassigned, entire families were forced to leave their wooden homes by the sea and move to the capital, Nuuk. They were packed into concrete apartment blocks, built by the Danes as symbols of progress and modern luxury. But to the hunters, it felt like a lonely prison made of cement. The shock wasn't just geographic, it was cultural. In schools, the message was clear. Inuit culture was inferior. If you wanted to become someone in life, you had to speak Danish, not Greenlandic. Children learned to feel ashamed of their roots just to fit in. That forced attempt to civilize the hunters created lasting damage. Parents lost their role as providers. Alcoholism surged. Homes fell apart. And this is where the invisible enemy enters. Young people raised in fractured families, without affection and without a clear identity, often can't bear the weight of adult life. Taking one's own life became tragically common, an extreme reaction to losing who they were. Greenland's relationship with Denmark is complicated. Even though Greenland is autonomous today and could vote for independence at any time, full freedom comes at a steep price. The island still relies on Danish subsidies to survive economically. So, how do you heal a wound that deep? The answer takes us back to the beginning of this topic, nature. Remember how Greenlanders say nature is the precondition for life? They're using that as medicine. Recent projects have been bringing young people and elders to remote camps, far from concrete and apartment blocks. Out there, the older generation teaches the younger how to fish, how to clean the catch, how to build a fire. And in the silence of the fjords, the trauma begins to loosen its grip. The young person realizes their grandfather's tradition isn't backward, it's wisdom. Nature there isn't just scenery, it's independence. And above all, it's the moment when they feel in control of their own destiny again. Nature is a kind of holy medicine for Greenlanders. Living here is like holding a lifetime ticket to the greatest visual show on Earth. If you travel to the Iki Glacier or stand face to face with the ice wall of the Russell Glacier, it's not just the sight that hits you, it's the sound. The ice here is alive. It cracks, groans, and detonates like thunder when it breaks loose and crashes into the sea. In Ilulissat, the ice fjord, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, you sail between floating cathedrals that make any ship look like a toy. The scale is so unreal, your brain needs time to even process the distance. If you're searching for true isolation, Northeast Greenland National Park is the emptiest place in the Northern Hemisphere. It's larger than France and Spain combined, and its only residents are polar bears, musk oxen, and a handful of military scientists. Or there's Scoresby Sund, the largest fjord system on Earth, a labyrinth of water and rock that seems endless. For adrenaline seekers, the south offers the Tassermiut Fjord. Climbers call it the Patagonia of the Arctic. Vertical granite walls that rise straight out of the sea, an unforgiving challenge for anyone who dares to climb them. Out on the water, the silence is broken by the breath of humpback whales migrating into these icy summer seas. But the biggest show begins when the sun disappears. The northern lights in Greenland aren't subtle. With almost zero light pollution, the aurora dances with an intensity you rarely see elsewhere. For the Inuit, long ago, these lights were the spirits of ancestors playing ball in the sky with a walrus skull. Today, even with all our science, it's impossible to look up and not feel something spiritual. And it's this violent, raw, untamed beauty that makes people born here. Despite the cold, the isolation, and the hardship, proud to call this ice desert home. If you enjoyed discovering Greenland, hit like and subscribe to the channel. Any other impossible place you want to see here? Tell me in the comments. Every week, there's a new video about the most beautiful and most contradictory places on the planet. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one.